I build this as a conversation. I lied. I have a lot to get off my chest. So if the plot cooperates, I'd love to be able to engage at the end, but if you would just let me get through this, and then any questions that you might have. I want to start with a story, big surprise. In my former life, when I was traveling around the country, leading these pastoral mentoring groups, the sort of MO for that was I would fly into a city, get a rent-a-car, get to a location, stay usually with a pastor or sometimes in a hotel, and then be there for 3 or 4 days and lead several groups in that geography, then go back to the airport and fly back to Seattle. So one night I landed in Baltimore. It was in the fall. It was a stunningly beautiful day like this, but it was in the fall. And I'm on top of the world. I am cruising up I-95 out of Baltimore towards Wilmington. And I came up over a rise on the interstate, and I almost smacked into a U-Haul truck because it was right at dusk, and they didn't have their lights on. And they, that sort of gray color of the U-Haul just blended right into the highway, and it was alarming. So I'm a pastor, I'm a fixer, I'm going to take care of this problem. So I did everything I could to try to get that guy to know they didn't have his lights on. I wasn't being smart. I cared for his safety and for mine and for others on the interstate. Finally, I just got in front of him, slowed way down, put my hand out the window and went like this to the curb, and he pulled over. I just opened my door, jumped out, and said, "Hey, you don't have your lights on." He gave me 2 thumbs up, put his lights on, away we go. About, 4 or 5 miles further north on the road, I start to realize that people around me are acting kind of weird. They're looking at me and they're gesturing. You know where this is going. You're right. I didn't have my lights on. That's the spirit in which I'd like to enter into this conversation. Which is to say, I don't always have my lights on. I like to tell other people when they don't have their lights on, but I'm very well aware that I don't always have my lights on. So I hope that the things I have to say to you today you can receive in that spirit. They're one set of observations from one guy who's had the deep privilege of being with you for 12 years. And he's going to miss you terribly. I want to start by talking about your staff.
Bravo.
I think you should fire them all in heartbeat. I regard it as an act of the deepest pastoral care for you that Joseph beat the bushes enough. And I believe I'm accurate in this. Pushed his sabbatical back until he found somebody that he trusted. This is not about me. This is about Joseph. His care for you is so deep and so abiding and so beautiful that he wanted to make sure that didn't get lost while he was gone. And I think that's an amazing act of pastoral care. And I met with him on Thursday. I gave him all the dirt on all of you. I'm surprised we could get it done in an hour and a half. I will just say this, we laughed, we cried. It was a messy lunch. That's the most time I've ever spent with Joseph. And it was really a privilege to just get to sit with him and to thank him and to tell him what I've seen in all of you and how much your welcome speaks of his welcome. Is Molly in the room?
Just walk down the hall.
Okay, I'm going to skip over Molly because I want her to hear this. It's been my incredible privilege to sit in Joseph's office and overhear the work that Jim and Cha do in this place every day. They're the ones who are here when none of the rest of us are. And it is just amazing what they are able to do and how they are the face of this congregation to the world. And many times they're a team because it's about the doorbell or it's about people walking in the door or whatever. But I know you know how blessed you are by these two incredible leaders. But Cha, it's just been such a pleasure. Don't ever let Jose go. I think it was the second day when I called my wife and said I would be willing to eat a fried egg off the floor in the men's bathroom. and I wasn't kidding. The devotion that he has to this building. Carol, you're going to have to stop. Maybe just turn your chair. Fair enough. The devotion that he has to this building and how deeply he understands it as a tool of your ministry makes him worth his weight in gold. And it's just... He's amazing. And he's been such a great friend, as have John and Jim and all the rest. David. David and I made too many trips to Turtle Bread, way too many trips. When I did my sabbatical fill-in for 6 weeks in Big Sky, this past summer, I lost 15 pounds. I've gained every one of them back with you for 3 months. Turtle Bread has something to do with that. The last time David and I were alone driving back from Turtle Bread, he had those big hands of his on the steering wheel of that brand new Audi that he loves. And I just said, David, when I look at those hands, I just think there must be a brain in each one. Because this brain wouldn't be enough. I could do a whole forum just talking about your amazing staff. No, I saw Molly. Oh, Molly. Like Joseph in his faithfulness in finding you a sabbatical fill-in, I think it's an amazing act of faith and commitment and trust in God that Molly was willing to come here with 25% of her internship supervision completely undisclosed. I think that is amazing. That she was faithful enough to just follow the Spirit's call. And Molly, you've been amazing to work with. I've learned so much from you. I hope you've learned a thing or two from me. I think maybe you have, but it's just been wonderful. Thank you for leaning in and for just making that so wonderful. Okay, that was kind of the prelude. I want to read you a little verse from Philippians 4. If there's anything worthy of praise, think on these things. Whatever is excellent, think on these things. That's what you do. You think about what is excellent. And you have set a really high bar for yourselves, as I've observed it in almost every aspect of your ministry. The care of your building, the quality of your music, the way you do the liturgy, the outreach that you have into the community. There is this sense of deep, deep rootedness and faith that make you want to do things well, not so you can say you did them well, or not to show them off, or not for 1,000 other reasons that you could be doing them. But you do them because you love Jesus. And you want others around you to love Jesus. And you want them to be drawn to this place. And to find here the love of God in Christ Jesus through the power of the Holy Spirit that each one of you has found in a different way. But your commitment to love God back the way God has first loved you by offering your very best is so evident in your ministry. And that could get a little precious. You know, a little snooty even. But it hasn't. It's not how I experienced it. It's born out of a deep conviction to the gospel. And that, I think, is what makes it whole and really, really healthy. My second Bible verse is, little children, let us love not in word or speech, but in truth and action. And this is just, just going to the next door knocking. It's a neighbor of the one I just went through with you. There's an authenticity about what you do here that worship equips you for. So I see diapers in the sanctuary every time I worship with you. And I see a long historic presence in this community, in the sanctuary, every time I worship with you. And I see your conviction to welcome in the people who stand on the street corner and are shivering every time I worship with you. I see those things. And they encourage me, they encourage my vision to see that this isn't like a Sunday morning show that you buy a ticket for. It's an empowering encounter with the risen Christ. And I know that people who walk in here for the first time feel that, because there has been a visitor somehow connected to me who's been here almost every Sunday of the 12 Sundays. Actually, I'm going to play a little game with myself on the airplane on Wednesday and see if I can see how true that really is. But there was one at the 8:30 service again this morning that just knocked my socks off. I had no idea he was in town, and there he was in worship. And those people say to me, wow, what's going on here? Like, this is a really, really special place, we can tell. So thank you for that. Being just not hearers of the word, but also doers of the word. Welcome one another just as Christ has welcomed you. This might be the hardest part of the presentation for you to hear. Because this is where I have my greatest concern for you. I want to play a little game with you called Let's Go to the Mosque. Okay? So imagine that you have a friend who's Muslim and invites you to meet them at the mosque for services. So I have a couple of questions for you. Would you know where to park? Would you know what door to go into? Would you know if men and women have to go in separate doors? Do you know if your head needs to be covered or not? Do you know whether or not to keep your shoes on? Do you know if you can enter their worship space? Do you know if you have to do anything before you enter their worship space? If you are with them worshiping, can you do all the stuff they're doing? Or are you there to observe it? Now, if you know the answer to all those questions, great. Have a nice time at the mosque. But I suspect that most of you don't know all the answers to those questions. And I know this is a little hard for you to hear in Lutheran Minneapolis, but you are living among hundreds of thousands of people who do not know the answer to those questions about the Lutheran Church. And they are terrified to walk in the door. We had a woman come through our catechumenal process who lived like right down the street. Our church was up on a big hill. She was right at the bottom of the hill. It would be like from here to Lake Street. When she finally got into the process with us, she said, I walked by those church doors every Sunday for 7 years on my way to get coffee and the newspaper. And I was longing to come in there. Longing. But I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to get in. And she said, one day I walked by and it was summer and the windows were open. We don't have air conditioning. And the front doors were open. And it looked like maybe I could just like sneak in and have a peek at what these people were doing. And in the best way possible, somebody caught me. And I've been coming back ever since. She served 3 terms as council president after she came through the process and renewed her baptism. I don't have the answers about how a wider welcome might happen here. But I think thinking about how more welcome mats could be laid out on Chicago Avenue would be a really good conversation, congregational conversation for you all to have. There are people out there who are longing to be on this side of the walls with you. They might not even know it yet, how much they're longing. But whatever you can do to help with that, I think would be really evangelical of you. And then, of course, I will admit 100% bias to the next thing I'm going to say. But what are you going to do with them once they're in the door? Like, what process do you have for an unbaptized person, or a person who was baptized but has been driven off or stomped off or slunk away? What process do you have to help them understand what it means to affirm your faith in this place and to live as Jesus would have us live? It's a little bit about the mosque conversation all over again. You know, how do you let them get what you got? And it will not work. It is not an answer to say, well, they'll just hang around with us for a while and they'll get it. We're sort of beyond that in the history of Christianity in North America. They need more explicit formation. And that is a place where I think a really great congregational conversation could take place about what that could look like. The adult catechumenate isn't the only answer. It's an answer. I think it's a really good one. But how do you, we used to call this at Finney, we used to call this putting concrete boots on people. How do you put concrete boots on people? Not unwillingly. I'm not talking about hostage taking. But how do you inculcate in folks, even over the process of a year of formation, of really intentional formation, how do you inculcate a sense of belonging and welcome that is deep enough that when the waters, whatever waters, get a little choppy, the waters at home, the waters in their friendship circle at church, you know, all of a sudden they thought you were all wonderful, godly people, and now they're angry about something, or somebody's angry with them. So, you know, when the waters start to get a little choppy, how can you have made this place enough of a home that they don't, like the Israelites in the desert, just want to go back and have melons and leeks in Egypt? You know, they want to stay because they know what it means to have Jesus in their life. And that's enough of a rudder on their ship to withstand some choppy waters. So I don't know. I'm just giving you that one to think about. And we discovered, you know, we would have these visitors come and then we didn't have anything to offer them. You know, there was like no place for them to go to get their questions answered. And they had deep questions. I mean, people will walk into church for the darndest reasons. Like their husband was just killed in an automobile accident and they don't know how they're going to get out of bed tomorrow morning. And they heard that there was this man named Jesus, and they've tried everything else, and maybe this would work. Or their friend invited them to come with them, and they loved the music, and they were like, whoa, I'd like a little more of that. Or they heard the saving word, and they maybe didn't understand it, but somehow Jesus got hooks in them. And I just think every church in North America, in this increasingly godless culture, needs a place where people like that can land and really have their hearts opened to the power of the Scriptures. Did not our hearts burn within us as he opened to us the Scriptures? He's not here walking around any roads like he was to Emmaus. So he's counting on you to do the opening up of the Scriptures. I mean, I get it. I went to seminary. He is here. but he's here. That's the miracle of the church. Okay, I'm done lecturing you about that. Oh my goodness, look at this. The next Bible verse is, "Were not our hearts burning within us?" As he was talking with us on the road. This is just an observation. Maybe I'm all wet. Maybe I don't have my lights on. I think you are longing for opportunities to talk to each other. Longing to just be together without an agenda. I think that would be so healthy for you. And again, I'm not sure how you do it. Do you have a congregational retreat? Do you have small groups? The catechumenate would help with that. Again, I'm not here to sell that. I'm just pointing to it as a resource. But I've been in several smaller assemblies with you. A couple of committee meetings, a couple of parties. You throw great parties, by the way. Just a couple of receptions where you can't get people out of the building because they just want to be together and talk. And I think a lot of this has to do with COVID. We sort of forgot how to do that. And we're longing for just one other person to say, yeah, I feel as crappy as you do. I don't know why it is, but I can't get my life organized anymore. We used to have people over for dinner, I forgot how to set the table. Just stuff like that. But I think there's a need for some small talk, some just how are you doing? What have you been doing? How's everything? And then I think there's some longing for some deeper conversation. How is it with you and Jesus these days? What's going on with your soul? And where's our church going? What do you think's next for us? Those kinds of conversations. And you're so equipped to do that. You're so articulate. There's no paucity of words among you. I hope that sounded kind. I meant it kindly. I'm the one up here jabbering.
Don't repeat that against us on the past.
This is going to get real fun. 1 Peter 1:22. See how they love one another. I've just felt so loved for 12 weeks. My poor wife. I'm going to go home so needy. But I've felt so loved because I sense such deep love here. There's just this conviction that this is a ship that you're on, and you're out to sea, and there's no way off. There's no life rafts. So you're going to have to figure it out with one another. And I think you're really good at doing that. I've just heard some sentences of peace and reconciliation and deep devotion to one another. And that kind of halo around your ministry makes it a place that people want to come back to also. But I want you to know that is evident and obvious to an outsider, that there is deep love and deep conviction here. And we're all humans, so we all have our issues. But there's a sense that the waters of baptism are the great equalizer for you. And I've just been on the receiving end of that for 12 weeks, so it's been beautiful, and I thank you for it. This is from John 14. Those who love me will keep my word, and my Father will love them. And we will come, and we will make our home with them. So I want to talk to you about home. I had a parishioner who had 2 elderly German sisters who had not been back to Germany since they were little girls. They were evacuated in circumstances I don't know about prior to the war, and they became American citizens, grew up here, raised their families. But they were in their 80s, and they kind of announced to their 50-something kids, we're going back to Germany. We want to go back and see our home while we are still able to travel. And the kids, were a little concerned about these 2 gals getting on a plane. This is way before COVID. This might have been in the late 90s. And so the sons sat them down and said, this sounds like an idea you're really excited about. We support you. How can we help you make this happen? And they said, well, we kind of think we have everything we need. We think we're going to be okay. We're not dead yet. And so one of the sons said, well, do you think you can... Do you think you can even find your home? And one of the sisters said, I know if we start at the church, we can find our way home. for 12 weeks, I've come off that ramp of I-35W and turned right on 31st and saw that cross and that orb at the top of your roof. And every day I thought, if I start at the church, I can find my way home. And I have found my way home with you. And that picture in my head, that feeling, that conviction is going to help me find my way home to Seattle on Wednesday. And every one of you is going to be there with me. And I will carry you in my heart and in my prayers and in my experience for the rest of my life. And for that, I think deeply. I'd be glad to take a couple of questions if you have them, or we can just lay it down there. But this is Mount Olive. I can imagine there would be questions. Bart.
I'm going to just agree with two of your points. That doesn't mean I don't agree with all the others, but I just have a comment about two of the here. Elaine and I have been members here since 2005. That's going on 18 years now. I don't know how many times I've been involved in groups or studies or conversations or and intentional in their nature about how do we share about who we are, how do we do it more effectively, brings up words like communication, about, making your presence known outside the walls, all those sorts of things. And it's happened over and over and over again because I think you're absolutely right. There is a strong need and a strong hunger. But it's never gotten there. And that's, all of you can throw hymnals at me. I'm agreeing with the guy. And so, it's never gotten anywhere, really. And I think, as I've gotten old enough to be reflective about it, after 18 years here, that I think it's because we always started in the wrong place. Had conversations this way with leaders and followers, for example. Instead of looking at the group of followers and saying, how can we learn from one another, as opposed to having someone with authority in front taking comments and questions or ideas. But the expectation of all those followers is that those leaders are going to fix this up now and they're going to take us forward. And it's really going to be everybody.
Yeah.
So that was one.
Well, and I'm going to just push that. You opened that door, so I'm going to walk through it. I'm going to push that point a little bit further. The people we really need to be asking, and I don't mean we at Mount Olive, I mean we in the 21st century North American Christian, but maybe particularly Lutheran church, the people we need to be talking about are the people that are outside the doors. We need to learn from them what it is that they have questions about. And we can't do that if they're not invited into the conversation. The ancient framers of the catechumenate realized that if they did not continue to engage the world around them by being a permeable body of Christ, that before they knew it, they would blink and look around and the church would become a stale, static institution. And that's exactly, I know maybe this sounds harsh, but in my judgment, that's what happened in the post-Constantinian years of church history. Because we stopped inviting that outside voice to say why, what, how come, tell us more, where, who. Inside, we get to go on a little bit with twin talk, language that everybody understands. This woman that I love to travel with when we do training and who's mentioned in my book, she would just say all the time, Hoffman, watch your language. And she wasn't talking about swearing. She was talking about things like words that people like her don't understand. Words like narthex and, pardon me, undercroft. just saying. That felt risky, but I do have a I didn't know what that was when I got here. Honestly, I do know the English language, so I could kind of figure it out, but I've never been to a Pennsylvania. I'm just a poor farm boy from Pennsylvania. I didn't get out much. But then there's all the shun words. Salvation, sanctification, resurrection. One of my red pen things with interns in their sermons was just to, just put a big red line through all that religious language. It was beautiful when David was talking about Susan. I think actually it was Susan talking about herself. I love to use one-word syllables. I love to use words that everyone understands. Earth, fire, wind. Remember that from 2 or 3 weeks ago? Yeah, that's spot on. You hate it when you're at a dinner party and people start talking about their specialty that you don't know anything about. You know how uncomfortable that is, and you just want to have another drink. Because it's just a little too uncomfortable, And it's not up to the people who are coming to ask you to translate for them. That's hospitality. That's on us to help people understand the language we speak in this place and why we speak it.
I had two.
I'm going to come back to you if we have time. It seems only fair to spread the joy around. John.
I appreciate you putting it in the North American context. If you would, where are we on a scale? Is it going to be harder for us or easier for us, given our skills, our unusualness and whatever? Do we have more work to do, or can you point out our special gifts that would make it easier for us to lead the greater church in North America?
We being Mount Olive.
Yes.
Oh, I think you are so set up for this. You have so many gifts that would help you become like a bastion of here's how we stay deeply, deeply liturgical and musical and all those things, all those ols we love here. And at the same time, just kick the front door open. I think you are uniquely set up for that. So, especially with a process like the catechumenal process, you already have a rich ritual life, which is, you can't do the catechumen without that. You already have an Easter ritual. You already deeply understand the dying and rising of baptism. You are so far down the highway already. It's just like, you know, when you're passing the next entrance ramp, could you let that semi on with you to sort of carry you in its drift, in its wake to the next place? No, I think you're uniquely set up here to do it, in the way that Finney Ridge was in Seattle. David.
So the word church these days is like almost a reflex response from the greater culture. Church can mean I'm not wanted. Church can mean there are people of a specific belief system that I refuse to adhere to. It's about in many minds, it's more about exclusion than inclusion. Okay, so we're
in the mind of the popular culture.
In the mind of the popular culture, which is the one that we're talking about, trying to reach and say, you know, how do we do that in your mind, other than just saying we're not like them? You know, we're not brand X. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, this is just the first thing that popped into my head, but this paid huge dividends for us in this ministry of outreach. We just started putting stuff on our reader board outside. Questions welcome here. Fears welcome here. Doubts welcome here. It was so simple, but honestly, I met people in the narthex who said, I came today because I just wanted to see if you were telling the truth or not. So, I mean, that's just one like teeny tiny little baby step. But if that kind of bumper stick gets into the attitude of the populace of this congregation, hey, next door neighbor who I see isn't backing out of the driveway on Sunday morning to go anywhere, you ought to come with me someday and just see what we do at Mount Olive. It's a place where your questions and doubts and fears would be welcome. Maybe you don't have any questions or doubts or fears, but I bet you do. And if you'd like to find a place where those are welcome, hop in the car some Sunday morning. But then, I mean, then you have to have a place for them to go.
Exactly.
With those questions, doubts, and fears, right? I mean, if they love what they hear here, they're going to want to know more about it. And so having that architecture in place, I think, is really important. Is that
Yep, thank you.
helpful? Okay, Art.
Well, my second one, I think we rehearsed this, that the other thing, I remember a very smart person once told me, another clergy person, about, Art, don't ever forget that you have to teach people about Lent, Holy Week, and Easter every year. Because you can't assume that everybody's got it. And if you don't got it, the result is you feel stupid. And you don't want anybody here to feel stupid. And so it seems to me that I think there, as you sort of alluded to, that we sort of assume that everybody's got it. But we aren't very good at being intentional on making sure we're talking about it. There must be creative ways that we could talk about Lent, Holy Week, and Easter every year so that it's fresh for all of us.
Yeah, 7 times 7 ways, you know, is like the communication rule of thumb, or at least it was when I was
And then the other half of that is to say that it vanished. And it wasn't that good.
done.
Yeah, growing up a Baptist, now don't throw me out of the church yet. Joseph says I have no guarantees because he's the pastor here. Dave says we can always find a reason to get there. But sometimes, growing up a Baptist and then going to a Presbyterian church and taking instructions in a Roman Catholic church, then going to a Lutheran college and going to their chapel, which I could understand, But getting into the formal liturgy, not being used to that, I often wondered if Jesus could even understand.
Yeah, I wonder about that sometimes.
And I've noticed visitors, you know, 'cause I will say, our greeter over here.
Andrew.
Bald-headed
Yeah.
guy. He recognizes everybody. He's the ambassador for people first coming to this church.
But it's not just his job.
No.
It's everybody's job.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for debate. On the other side of it, we have sat with people in church, and boy, they don't know where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My wife will point it out, you know. So it's tough. If you haven't grown up in the Lutheran formal tradition of worship, to walk into it and understand what's going on.
Yeah, on the West Coast, where another Crippen is pastor, Stephen, I don't know if this still happens at his church, and he's rather new at his place. But my wife and I worshiped there when I left Finney and we were searching for a church. And on the inside of their worship folder was a beautiful, welcoming sentence that I commend to you. And you could ask your brother if it's still there. I'm pretty sure it came from Sam Torvin, for those of you who know who that is. But the sentence was something like this: "We welcome you to our worship today. It might seem unfamiliar and formal to you. Let the liturgy carry you. And as you continue to visit with us, it will become familiar and significant." When we read that as Lutherans in an Episcopal congregation, we didn't know everything that was going on. And again, it's a little thing, but it was really helpful. It just identified a recognition that we were seen there. And that, I think, is really important. Bob?
Along the exact same line, many of my friends and acquaintances and people that I've talked to over many years say, well, you Lutherans have got too many answers. And that's true.
Yeah. You know, this is going to be the last thing I say because I need to use the restroom before and I need to replenish Kleenex and all that kind of stuff. I just don't want to leave you with the thought that this is all about our heads. Christian formation it's a total body experience. It's about all of us. And I like to say to Lutherans when I'm with them sometime and they get real heady, you know what, you need to get a neck. Because you need to move some of this out of your head and into your heart and into your gut and maybe even to other places in your body. Because Jesus is interested in the whole person. And so are we, because we're Jesus people. So please don't go away from all of this thinking, you know, if we just get all the right answers, we'll have this problem licked. It's not really a problem even. It's a challenge that's out there for you and for every church. And I'm going to leave you with one last thought about that. In the Small Catechism, Luther never said, "What does this mean?" I know we all, well, I don't know we all memorized it, but I bet a lot of us did. What does this mean? It's not what it says in German. In German it says, "Was ist das?" What is this? What is this? And then then, a bunch of academics got a hold of it and they said, well, what is this? Wow. What does this mean? That's an important little nugget to carry with you into this congregational conversation. What is this? Because that's the question that the world is asking. What is this at 31st in Chicago? What is this 3, 4, 5 pages of chanting that they do at the beginning of their service today? What is this that this guy is reading to us for what seems like a half an hour after that, out of that big green book? What is this? That's the question, not what does it mean. Who had their hand? There was one more. Yeah, please.
Along those same lines, I remember a committee meeting with Elaine Liff, whose husband was Jewish. And she was relating that when she would discuss her sermons, she was a pastor, when she would discuss her sermons with her husband, and he would ask her, how does that work? And that was her cue to sort of deconstruct what she had been saying, that she was getting too much into the shun words and too much into the preaching to the choir. She needed to back up and say, okay, how does that work?
Yeah.
So, another way of looking at it.
Thank you. The best thing you can do to thank me is to welcome back your pastor with open arms and lots of love, and to make sure that because he's coming back in Holy Week, he doesn't immediately undo his entire sabbatical. and just put your arms around him and let him have a soft landing.
Yeah.
You are so blessed by his ministry and by the ministry of the other staff people here. But Joseph's just going to need a landing pad, some tenderness. He's coming back at a really, really, he's fired up about it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, who wouldn't be? But breathe. Thank you so much.